Hello guys, and welcome back once again to a new episode of Chris Matthew Music. In today's video, we are going to discuss 3 common pitfalls that most musicians do when they try to play music correctly. So, if this is the first time you have seen my channel and you're interested to learn more about this topic, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit also the bell icon so you will not miss any of my future projects. And now, let's get moving! Let's talk about the first pitfall, fingering. The problem is that when most people are trying to learn an instrument, let's say the piano, a lot of people tend to make their first mistakes commonly in fingering. And that's normal because the students that are playing an instrument that is like the first time that they are learning to play that instrument, they are trying to learn how the keys are played, and they are learning how to move their hands to play those keys and make a melody, right? But even in a professional level, sometimes one can make the greatest mistakes of all in fingering. And that could happen as a consequence of, for example, lack of practice. So here, I am going to show you an example of how fingering can vary. And I will show it to you as scales examples. So let's take as an example C major and B major. Okay? Let's move on. C major scale is played like this. Left hand and right hand. At 2 octaves. And then B major scale at 2 octaves. The problem is that not all scales are played exactly with the same fingering pattern. For the C major chord, you saw in the left hand that the pattern of fingering was 5-4-3-2-1, 3-2-1, and 1 octave higher for 3-2-1, 3-2-1. And the right hand, you saw that the pattern was 1-2-3, 1-2-3-4, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 4, 5. And this pattern is not the same for all scales. Sometimes there are different irregular patterns that vary because for purposes of more comfortable positions for your hand, so you can play the scale or song correctly. So now let's look at the B major scale, and let's look at the left hand first. You may guess that maybe you can start with the 5th finger. So let's start. We place the 5th finger on the B key, and then we play. Now, as you may have noticed, I use the first finger for the F sharp key. And that's because by instinct, you tend to use all your fingers at once as a pattern of 5-4-3-2-1. But this is not always the case. You cannot use the 5-4-3-2-1 pattern all the time, at least not for the B major scale. So you cannot do this and then jump to here with one of those fingers. This will lead to an uncomfortable position for your hand. So please, do not do that. The correct fingering for the B major scale using the left hand is the following. If you raise it one octave higher, you may play it as it follows. You start with the fourth finger, not the fifth finger. So this varies. Starting with the fourth finger will allow you to change more dynamically and comfortably the fingering from the first finger to the fourth finger. The same thing happens here when you raise it one octave higher. When you play these notes, you reach the octave, and when you play the scale again, you change from the first finger to the third. So that's the story of the B major scale with the left hand. Now let's see what happens with the right hand. As you may have noticed, the pattern is the same one used for the C major scale with the right hand. So that is the reason why fingering is so important to master when trying to play different songs and also scales in the most precise and correct way. Fingering is mostly random because there is no such a methodic way to master fingering. The only way and like a key to master fingering is practice. Practice and more practice. Alright, so let's move on to the second pitfall. Accents every fifth interval. So you may ask, what is this? I mean, this is not common in basic music learning, but it is kind of an aesthetic element of scales when you are trying to learn for the first time music scales. But it happens mostly not only in the piano, but also in every instrument you're playing. Guitar, bass, harmonica, violin, you name it. So, whatever instrument you are learning, you should know that every time you play a song, you need to give an accent to that song. And that's because you need to have a certain movement in your melody. You need to give that to your audience. You need to give to your audience a melody that rises up from your most deep inside of your being. To illustrate what I mean, let's look at another scale, G major. So let's play G major here at 2 octaves. So yeah, what's the thing here with accents? Well, the same way that you play your songs with accent, it will also apply to scales. You should also play scales with accent. But how do you know which kind of accent to apply? Well, you may play your scales at each type of interval. I explain myself. If you play the G major scale again, like this, playing the G major scale like this is not the same as you play the G major scale like this. You saw here how the G major scale rised up from the piano. And what happened here is that I gave an accent in the scale every fifth interval, like starting with the root key, G. Here is an accent. Then the following accent lies right here. A. Then, again, sorry, it lies right here. Because you play it like this, like you play the next accent lies right here on E. Then, as you go backwards, because you need to go backwards when you're playing a scale, you play the scales forward and backwards. So when you play it in a backward sense, like you start here, you play again on E. And that's why when you play with accents every fifth interval, you then end again with G. So that's why when you play the G major scale, it sounds pretty awesome because you apply accents to it. And it applies for both the left and right hands. The point here that I am trying to show you with this demonstration is that you should apply accents every time. And as I said in the discussion of the first pitfall, this is a matter of practice. So if you practice more daily, then you can master this more easily every day. The next pitfall is very common when you are learning a new instrument. It happens mostly in the piano. Avoid overclipping both hands. And this is common with scales. Like, let me show you with the G major scale. The C major scale. Look. Please avoid doing this. It is not exactly an overclipping, but it's kind of a delay between both hands. But like, if we want to get rid of the scales for just 2 seconds, then I will show you with another example, which is one of my singles that I have on my Spotify page and iTunes, Oxygenated Blues Power. I will play a fragment of that song to show you an example of overclipping between both hands or also a delay between both hands. So, yeah, it sounds awful. So please, avoid that at all cost. And this is common mostly on beginner levels, specifically in the piano. So that's all for today, guys. Remember that the key for everything is to practice daily. That is the only way to get the most of yourself as an artist. So I encourage you to keep on with your instrument, keep on going. Just remember that the music is a world without limits. I hope that these advices were helpful for you, and I'll see you then in the next episode. Bye!